Mhm. Okay, my name is Phil Unger. I'm the president and CEO of Cadian. With me today, we have Steve Dola, who's our chief data officer, and Amanda Summers, who is our director of client engagement. So, next slide, please. We each have a little bit of a part to play today in the webinar. So, why are we hosting this webinar? That's you might be asking. What really precipitated this was we put a poll out on LinkedIn to a lot of our customers and all our followers on LinkedIn, and there's about four different topics that were there. And Power BI versus Spotfire was the number one topic that everybody wanted to see a webinar on. And for those of you in industry, those of you in sales, this is a very this topic's been around for a long time. And I'll also say that if I had a dollar for every time I've been asked this question, I'd be a very rich man. So just to let you know, and Amanda, I'll take you through. We are partners with both. Amanda will talk to that as well. But really, at the end of the day, what's this about? So, Steve, if you could click one more time for me. So, I think many organizations are struggling to decide whether Power BI or Spotfire are they redundant, are they complementary? And unfortunately, I think in industry, what's happened is there's been the vendors have kind of positioned themselves. Of course, there's others besides Spotfire, Power BI, Tableau, and I would even say Excel is maybe for some people is still the number one analytics tool that they use. But my point is, there's been a lot of positioning by the vendors, like this is better than this. This is free. Well, no, it's not. And I think some of the stuff we're not really going to talk about costs today, but costs are a factor, right? Costs for cloud costs are skyrocketing. A lot of people are faced with that as well. But so that's the problem statement we're going to try to talk to you today. And then, Steve, if you could click one more time, please. The objective of this webinar is to help you understand the features of each tool. Now, this is at a high level. We're not here to teach you Spotfire. We're not here to teach you Power BI. We basically went through, built a matrix of the things that we wanted to talk about and highlight, I guess, as some of the key functionalities for each one of these tools. And then, of course, we've got two use cases, examples on how they're used, and then how can they work together? Because really, at the end of the day, in these heterogeneous environments, we're seeing a lot of people have both. So the creativity of what we're seeing from our clients, though, as well, is that we have people with strategies on how they can work together. So we're hoping to show you guys all that today. And feel free, the chat will be open. So if you have questions, please go ahead and put your questions into the chat. So with that, I will turn it over to Amanda. And Amanda, please go ahead.
Sounds great. Thank you, Phil. And as Phil said, I'm the Director of Client Engagement here at Cadian. So this topic comes up a lot. When do I use Power BI? When do I use Spotfire? Or can I use them both together? So I'm just going to spend, for those of you that are just joining us for the first time or are not really familiar with who Cadian is, I'm just going to, I promise there's only 3 slides and then we're going to get into the content. But I just wanted you guys to understand who we are and how we support our clients. So from that perspective, as Phil said, we have many people joining us from around the globe. So we are a global partner, and we are not bound geographically on where we can support our clients. We've been in business for over 17 years. We're actually in our 18th year, and we're actively supporting over 100 clients today. And the real differentiator we have is we're really focused on data. We're not trying to be an infrastructure company. We're not trying to be an application company. We are here to help clients that gain better insights through data-driven decisions. And so everything that we do is wrapped around that. And we have a full complement of in-house data specialists, architects, and engineers that support our clients on a day-to-day basis. Another thing that we do is we do formalized training. So we do a lot of certified Spotfire training, but we also help our clients train in other areas around the data side of the house. So next slide, please, Steve. And just from that perspective, from a services perspective, where we are typically having conversations, our governance, risk, and compliance, it's a big concern for clients today, especially with large data sets. We do a lot of architecture and design work with some of our clients. And then where we'll focus today is really around the visual data science, analytics, and business intelligence with both Spotfire and then around Power BI. And then, of course, we support around the data security side and help with projects implementation, and then support and training needs. And last slide for me today, just to touch on, Steve, is around our strategic partnerships. And these partners have all been selected specifically because of what they bring from a data perspective to our clients. So we have had a long-term Spotfire partnership. We are a tier one Spotfire partner. Steve will talk a little bit today around how he's been working with Spotfire for over 17 years and knows it inside and out, but also working with Power BI. So we do a lot of work, and we find a lot of clients will have one or the other or both within their environment. And then, of course, we help around the virtualization side of things, all the way to data lakes, data warehouses, and things through our partnerships with Microsoft, with Databricks, and with Snowflake. And from that perspective, we do touch on some other technologies, but we're here today to focus on the Spotfire and Power BI. So, Steve, I'm going to turn it over to you, and let's get into friends, foes, or both.
Okay, thanks, Amanda and Phil. So yeah, hi, Steve Dola, Chief Data Officer, as Phil mentioned. And I have worked with Spotfire longer than with Power BI because it's been around longer. And as Phil mentioned, this is we had to present this at a high level. I did struggle a bit with, okay, how much detail do I give? Certainly if there are questions about specifics, but really my intent is to try to give you a bit of a perspective of where each of the tools fits. And then also where they can complement each other. And then if there's any questions that where you want to drill down on something more specifically, please feel free. But this will at least get that conversation started and give you maybe a bit of a sense of positioning. So I started by saying, trying to characterize the two tools at a high level. And so what I would say is that Power BI is great if you're really looking for a business intelligence tool that's easy to use, integrates well with Microsoft products, so that's one of its strengths, and provides powerful visualizations and reporting capabilities. It's really ideal for non-technical users, business analysts, and organizations who are already fully embedded in the Microsoft ecosystem. Spotfire is more for teams where, in addition to the ability to visualize and report, you also have a need to do advanced analytics, machine learning, and data science workflows. It offers a more encompassing solution for data scientists and for analysts working with large or complex data sets, or those needing more predictive insights directly. So at a basic level, both can do visualizations, both have a lot of ability to connect in, etc. Where I think the separation is where you get more into the advanced capabilities with analytics. And with that in mind, what I'm going to do next is drill down on some of the components of that, so we can kind of get maybe a bit more of a detailed positioning between some of those key kind of aspects. So the first is the data wrangling side. Spotfire has what's called a visual data canvas. It's basically a visual way of seeing how to build out the transformation. So when you pull your data in from your data source, you're able to do things like pivots, unpivots, calculations, a lot of stuff that's all kind of point and click type of data wrangling. So there's no coding required, et cetera, and you can get a lot done in a very short time using the data canvas. And then if however your needs are more extensive, where you need to do more complex data wrangling, then you can also implement using Python scripts. They're fully integrated into the Spotfire environment. So if you're comfortable using Python, it's easy to feed a data table in, have it process through that Python logic and spit out either data tables or other outputs. And it's all fully integrated. And it's actually integrated into the canvas. So you can actually see the flow of your data from your source tables and any internal transformations you've done through those Python data functions and back out into other data tables. And from there, then of course you can use those that data to visualize. With Power BI, it does include basic data transformation and cleaning tools, but more advanced features, you basically have to use Power Query. So you're gonna have a lot of Power Query kind of scripts that you're gonna write. It's less visual. It does have some ability to sort of see at each step what's the output that you're looking at, etc. And it's laid out in more of a kind of a linear fashion if you look at the Power Query structure. What I would say with both of these is this is important for data wrangling specifically at a specific dashboard level. And in both of these tools, it's important to think about how much of this should actually be done further back in the underlying data architecture. But certainly, if you need to do any kind of data wrangling at a dashboard level, both tools have that. The other one I thought was important to talk about is the ability to add custom visualization. So both tools have a basic set of visuals that will give you pretty much all of the basics that you need: your bar charts, your line charts, those types of things. Spotfire has something called mods, which really are wrappers around existing JavaScript visualization libraries. So you're not building all of the logic to do the actual visualizations. You're basically creating some code that shuttles the data back and forth between the Spotfire data tables internal and into the JavaScript libraries. So things like Google Charts or Plotly or D3, and it's based on a very simple model or API or interface. So you can take existing mods and customize them fairly easily. And most of the mods that are on the Spotfire community site actually include the source code. So it is possible to very quickly either modify an existing visual to maybe suit some special requirement you have. The mods are literally drag and drop if you want to use them as is from the community site. Power BI has more of an SDK, and it's based on Node.js, and it's available on GitHub. So there's a bit more development effort there, but they also do have a number of visuals available with source code on the Microsoft site. I would say in my experience, I find using mods a little more seamless in terms of getting them as a user, getting an existing mod in, and then also the development effort. But yeah, this is important because a lot of times there might be some unique needs you have for visualizations that aren't supported by either by the base visualizations or third parties that are provided. The next one I think is really where the differentiator is significant. Custom user interfaces, and this is really allowing you to customize how your dashboards look from a feel and interaction perspective, and the ability to customize data collection or data selection so that you can, for example, have drop-down lists, things like that. There's a very straightforward interface in Spotfire called the text area that lets you build basic interfaces that have drop-down lists, selection lists, text, and it can be formatted. And then if you want to go further, you can actually do that. You can add HTML and CSS to get even more complex types of interfaces, including any types of JavaScript libraries that might be usable for creating forms or inputs. And what's really nice about this is that it has a full integration between that and the ability to set properties on that can drive the way the visualizations work. So for example, you can have a bar chart where you can dynamically set the X and Y axes using drop-down lists. And it's very simple to do. Like I can basically create something like that in a matter of a couple of minutes and have full flexibility built into my visuals. And so I find that a very powerful kind of capability. The other thing you can do with Spotfire is you can actually embed it into full stack websites. Now that's more using a JavaScript API, but you can basically make Spotfire look like it's part of your actual website if that's the approach. And we have some clients that have more of a product approach where they use Spotfire as the basic engine. And so then they can incorporate it into their full stack website as opposed to it being the main website. Power BI has a bit more limited interface customization. And I found that it often requires, so there is, for example, an HTML third-party add-in to do some of that custom HTML kind of based development. but it is a lot harder to figure out how to do. And in some cases, I've struggled with getting things that are very simple to do on the Spotfire side to work the same way in Power BI. The most recent example was I just wanted to have a drop-down list that would affect some conditional logic in my data, and there was not I couldn't find an easy way to do that. And when you find solutions, they tend to be somewhat complex, using either DAX or there's a properties capability as well. But in my experience, I've just found that it's much more challenging to kind of build those types of things. And others may have, if you've got the experience and you've figured out ways to do it, then that's great. But when it comes to learning how to do this and doing it very efficiently, I have found that Spotfire has the edge there. And the other one is the customization through scripting. So the Spotfire has the ability to use IronPython scripts, which is basically an integration between Python and .NET. And so you have seamless integration where you can actually build out a Python script, an IronPython script that will do interactions with the interface. So for example, when somebody clicks on a drop-down list, it'll cause something to happen to a number of visualizations, like maybe resetting the widths and sizes. So it auto scales to your data, things like that. And so it is very powerful, and most of those IronPython scripts are very easy to find, and there's tons of them on the community site and things like that. And then the other part that is provided is the seamless integration with both R and Python for building and running R and Python models or scripts. And they can be once you've built a script, a data function, it can be triggered by user interaction. So for example, a user could mark some rows in a particular table, and that could drive the data function to execute and create the outputs that would then refresh a separate visualization automatically. And so that's a very powerful feature of Spotfire and how seamless it is. You don't have to write into APIs or anything like that. It's all basically when the Python code, for example, when the data table comes in, you've got a data frame automatically there for you that you can write your Python code against, and then you can basically publish or return a data frame that's automatically creates a data table in the Spotfire environment.
So Steve, there was a comment here in the chat about
yes,
from Niraj with regards to Spotfire having industry visualizations, wake well logs, and mods, that kind of thing. So you're talking about mods. Can you talk a little bit about mods here? Because would that fit into customization and via scripting?
No, that was more my comment here about the custom visualization. So 100%, yes, that's some of the pre-built mods. And so yes, there are mods for well logs. There's several. I think there's about 30 or 40, if I recall, maybe more. And they are available as drag and drop into your Spotfire environment, and they look just like they are built into your Spotfire environment. So they behave and act just like any other visualization. So easy to connect up to a data source and just basically drag and drop and go with it. So yeah, thanks for that. Because and I can basically, when I have a sec, I'll post the link to where those mods are hosted, so that everybody can have a look at them.
Sounds good. And then Steve, just to add to 14.5 is coming out with some action mods, visual mods. There's more mods coming in the next release in May timeframe. So that's what we're being told.
Yeah, so action mods are actually a replacement for the IronPython component. So they're the ability to script, but using a JavaScript action mod. And what's nice about that is that you can also debug them, so you can step through the code. Right now with the IronPython functionality, you have to, it's sort of a run and print output type of thing. There's not a step-by-step, like a debugger capability, but the action mods will enable that, so you can step through and debug your scripts, make sure that they're working properly. And then there's, oh, I think somebody just did it for me. Thank you. That's Phil. And then for Power BI, there is the ability to do Python scripting, but there are some limitations. There's some data marshaling overhead because of the way they've implemented that, and there's a limitation. I think it's 30,000 rows So there are some challenges, um, and um, and there's really very limited ability to dynamically change visualization and the interface on the fly. I kind of, my comment is there should be a Visual Basic like capability similar to like Excel or any of the other Office tools. And that's really the nature of the Iron Python code in Spotfire, is it's really letting you dynamically change how your interface behaves and works and adding additional capability. And plus it has access to the full Spotfire API. Um, so that's not available in Power BI, as far as I understand. I've searched around, and it would be nice to have that, because it would give more extensibility to the environment. Okay. Um, and then just want to touch on AI and machine learning integration. Spotfire, this is really its bread and butter. So the ability to integrate data science workflows. So both through R and Python, as well as another product that's provided, which is Spotfire Data Science, which allows for visual development of AI, ML kinds of workflows and processes. And it can be seamlessly integrated. So as soon as you've got your model built, you can run it and have it output the data into to be visualized within Spotfire in a very seamless way. Power BI does have that capability, somewhat limited, and it's through the Azure ML and some custom Python scripts. There are some pre-built AI models. The other thing I would mention is there are some built-in predictive components in Spotfire that you don't have to write R code for or use any the data science product. So you can do regression and some of the curve fitting, things like that. That type of capability is built in a drop-down list within the Spotfire environment. So if that's important to you and you want to have the most capability around your AI ML type of work, then Spotfire, I think, kind of does from an integration point of view, does kind of lead the pack here. And so, yeah, part of the consideration is the speed and ability for you to develop these things and to be able to efficiently develop them so that you can visualize them very quickly, and not having to mess around with integrations into things like Azure ML. So that's my words on that. And another area is the geospatial side. Have done some work in Power BI. Generally have to go to something like the ArcGIS visualization third party to get full mapping features. Spotfire has robust map visualization built in, the ability to integrate map services and shapefiles into Spotfire, and then also run geospatial processing via Python. Of course, take advantage of geospatial libraries, but also visually represent that in heat maps and things like that. Very straightforward to do using Python data functions. And then ease of use, I think there's some debate here. This could be both our kind of drag and drop type of set attributes capability. One feature that's kind of cool with Spotfire is the AI design. So you can actually get what's called the recommendations engine, and you can select different parts of your data table, and it'll give you recommendations on ways to visualize that. And then you can click on those visuals, and it'll automatically add them to your dashboard. So there are some nice features especially for beginning users, to be able to quickly build up visuals without having to think about, how do I configure this? How do I set this up? It's more of a data-driven strategy. With Power BI, you do have to drag the chart in and figure out which attributes or properties to set on that in order to get it to visualize the way you want. So that is a very nice feature. And I think the other key kind of differentiator here is, think of Spotfire as more of an integrated platform. So all of these components, the visualization piece, the Python and R components, the data science products, it's all part of a platform. And also, even on the architecture, the backend side, there's some data virtualization and data delivery components that we're not talking about here today, but they're all sort of nicely integrated. Power BI is more of a large ecosystem. So you start with the Power BI components, but you also have to bring in, Azure ML, or you have to bring in, if you're trying to do more customization, you might have to pull in Power Apps. So think of it as more of a large ecosystem that you have to integrate and bring all these pieces together in order to extend the capabilities of it. Okay, so having said all of that, and I know I mentioned some, pros and cons here and there, but we've seen them used together quite extensively, especially in oil and gas. And so this is an example of where we kind of see the positioning of the two products. Spotfire is definitely utilized for its advanced analytics, and especially geospatial analysis and real-time monitoring of things like drilling operations or any kind of facility operations. A lot of SCADA, a lot of real-time data. Engineers and analysts will use Spotfire to visualize subsurface data, optimize drilling locations, monitor production metrics, and it's really the one part of the industry where Spotfire has been used for decades now. In this is because it does these things so well that engineers, production engineers, those types of people love Spotfire for that purpose. Power BI is more employed for executive dashboard reporting, sort of summarizing operational data for decision makers. And it integrates nicely with things like financial systems and other business applications. So you get insights into cost, revenue, overall performance. So very much more of a business intelligence presentation of data rather than an analytics kind of view of data. And then we had customers who will take data, for example, from Power BI data sets and integrate into Spotfire. And so that is possible. So from an integration point of view, we do prefer that people serve data to both using common data delivery strategies. So whatever kind of data architecture you have, Spotfire and Power BI can be equal partners in that as consumers. But the key here is that you can really bridge the gap between your technical teams using Spotfire and your business teams using Power BI. And as I said, we see this a lot in oil and gas companies. And the other one is manufacturing. Again, similar kind of idea, but around some of the manufacturing use cases. So tracking production metrics. Spotfire can analyze real-time data from IoT devices on the factory floor to track metrics like equipment performance, output rates, downtime. Power BI can aggregate those for higher level stakeholders, showing trends over time and maybe KPIs or cycle times, that type of thing. For scheduling optimization, they can use, again, Spotfire can be used, its advanced analytics to maybe predict optimal production schedules based on resource availability, order demand, and machine utilization. So bringing all that data to bear, and it could even do simulations to reduce bottlenecks and improve production flow. Again, Power BI could be used for scheduling insights such as a Gantt chart or production calendar, things accessible to your shop floor teams and management for alignment. From a workflow management point of view in manufacturing, you could have Spotfire monitor production productivity, workforce productivity, and shift performance, and maybe take into account some labor data and task efficiency. And you can use Power BI to visualize workforce scheduling and availability, again, using Gantt charts, and allowing HR managers to allocate resources. And again, these are somewhat arbitrary kind of separations, but I think they illustrate that there's that difference between analytics and the business intelligence or dashboard reporting. Inventory and tracking and material planning. So you could track material usage in real time if you've got that ability, and identify shortages, overstock situations, optimizing your inventory levels. We do have a client we work with around inventory and understanding serial number stuff, and I know he's on the call. So yeah, Power BI could be used to summarize that data and maybe highlight some issues with supply schedules. In our case, we actually use Spotfire for both, but certainly Spotfire was useful to be able to assess that data and give some real understanding of what's going on in inventory. Alerts and notifications. Spotfire has a really good ability to set up triggers, so it'll watch KPIs or any kind of data values, and it can send automated alerts for things like deviations in production or machine breakdowns or delays. And presumably Power BI could integrate those into dashboards, so it could be used to surface those alerts into flagging any kind of critical issues and getting some response to that. And then for comprehensive insights, this is really where Spotfire's analytics complements the kind of Power BI visualizations by providing detailed operational data. So again, that example we talked about earlier, where perhaps there's a Power BI data set or a set of data from Spotfire that's advanced analytics that could be used in showing that data through Power BI. So in summary, Power BI is great if you're looking for a business intelligence tool. It's easy to use, integrates well with Microsoft products, provides powerful visualization and reporting capabilities. It's really ideal for non-technical users, business analysts, and organizations that are really part of the Microsoft-centric environment. Spotfire is good for, in addition to that, it adds the advanced analytics, the machine learning, kind of the data science workflow. And really, that is the positioning that Spotfire has taken, is that they are the data analytics and data science, visual data science capability that you might need. And I think I've hopefully made the case for that both can coexist and really provide a lot of coverage across your organization. So in summary, I think we see that as friends, they're widespread. They're used in a lot of organizations. Both tools have strengths and weaknesses, and they do work well together. And we do have multiple use cases where the tools are used together. I kind of summarized a bit on the foes. They kind of go back and forth a bit between whether the data wrangling using Power Query versus the Visual Canvas and Python in Spotfire. The custom visuals, my feeling is that Spotfire kind of leads the pack there, both with the availability of those mods. Some of them are industry specific, so that might also play a role. And I also feel that the integration and the working with native machine learning AI is stronger on the Spotfire side. Unless you use a third-party plugin for mapping, Spotfire definitely has some very strong features and is very powerful around both the mapping and the geospatial processing. And then from an ease of use, it's sort of the business users versus the data science and engineers. That's kind of where we see that separation. And yeah, I think they said this a couple of times. Really, they have both. They both have their place. And hopefully that what I've been able to lay out for you gives you a better insight into where each can play a role. And really, there are different strategies that you can use to build an architecture that leverages the strengths of both. Okay, so I can say thank you, but yeah, we're certainly open to
So Steve,
answer
maybe just
questions.
go back to that. Steve, if you wouldn't mind, just go back to that last slide. And
Okay.
so first off, everyone, apologies for, it seems like we were having some issues with Eventbrite and not everybody could get in today. So I'm not sure what that's about. So we'll have to troubleshoot that. So sorry if that wasn't as simple as possible. But for the next webinar, we'll make sure that it's a lot easier to get on here. Love to see some feedback, comments in the chat if this kind of hit the mark or if it left you wanting more. Again, our intent here was to really start the conversation with you. I mean, it's a very interesting topic. We know many of our customers and many people in industry have both. We know that there's many use cases where they can work together and are being positioned together. So I think that's something that if there's one thing to take away from that, it's I would say industry positions them separate, but I think there is a compelling story together as well. But okay, so we have one question here, Steve. Can you quantify what you view as a large data set, number of roles, etc.? Thank you,
I should have
Tim,
mentioned that. Yeah, thanks, Tim. I should have mentioned that is another differentiator because Spotfire can handle extremely large data sets. And the largest data set I've worked with was 440 million rows. I think it had about 20 columns. And yeah, it took a bit of time to load, but once that was loaded, I could effectively filter and do visuals on that data. So Spotfire is known for being able to handle very large data sets and in the hundreds of millions of rows of data. That is a problem that you can run into with Power BI. I've tried even data sets of several megabytes. I think I tried loading once, and this was just at the desktop level. And by the way, that is desktop. So when I loaded that, it was on a desktop that I loaded that, not on a server or anything like that. But yeah.
Yeah, Steve, I'd add too, we had a data provider once upon a time that had over 1 billion rows and it was 150 columns wide.
Yeah.
And we were in that case, we had to use advanced data services from Spotfire to extend it for additional capability, but we were able to open that data set as well. We have another one here. Has Power BI real-time analytics by chance? Does Power BI, I think, have real-time analytics by chance?
So by real time, do you mean streaming where you're getting real time data streaming into a dashboard? So, for example, you're pulling data from a sensor or something out there. Because yes, that's something that Spotfire does have. I'm not aware of streaming from a Power BI perspective, and to be fair, I've not actually had that use case come up for myself. So my understanding is because well, what I will say is real time data requires a different kind of infrastructure and a different kind of setup because of the requirements of millisecond type of response, both streaming that data and also doing any kind of transformation or mapping that needs to be done to that data before it's visualized. And Spotfire is easily up to the challenge of that. I don't know off the top of my head if there's real time capability from a Power BI, so I'd have to check into that.
We do know that the ecosystem with Power BI. So Power BI is just as a quick differentiator for people that maybe don't know. Power BI is a tool. It's a reporting tool. But then there's the Power BI ecosystem that has many, many things. For example, if you wanted to do machine learning within Power BI, well, then there's Azure ML that you can integrate in. So somebody showed me a picture of the Power BI landscape, and it was massive. So many different tools and capabilities within there, but compare and contrast that with Spotfire's very integrated, very easy to like for automation services, for example, or statistical analysis. It's just modules that you add within the platform that fit in nicely. Just another license SKU. So anyway, so I guess to answer the question, there's potential that there could be a module there for real-time analytics. We just haven't used it yet. So as Steve mentioned. Any other questions or comments on this? I'd love to see in the chat if you can, like, was this helpful? Like, was this a good use of your time? Again, like our intent here was really to this was just really to start the conversation. I mean, we are starting to see a bit of a convergence, if you will. It's really nice to see that in the industry that we don't necessarily talk about this versus this anymore. It's like, well, I know I have this and I know I have this. How do I make it work? Right. So it's kind of the heterogeneous environments are kind of taking over. It's not so much that what's the tool. You should use the tool, I believe, where you're the most productive. But again, there's some very specific requirements for how to position these tools as well. Thanks, Andrea, for the comment. Yeah, oil and gas, that is, will we post the slides? So here's what we're planning on doing. Although Ken, what I would recommend you do is maybe just send an email to info@cadian.com and we can send you a copy of the slide deck. And if anybody else would like it, what we're going to be doing with this webinar now is we will be, of course, the event's being recorded. We'll post it to our YouTube channel so that you can go and review it at your leisure. That'll be the immediate next step. But if you send an email to info@cadian.com and if you would like the slide deck, I don't see a reason why we can't share it with you.
And by the way, I do have a bit of an answer for Niraj. I did do some quick searching here. So apparently there is a Power BI real-time streaming, but it's just been announced October of last year. It's going to be retired to be replaced by real-time intelligence in Microsoft Fabric. And so it looks like it's again, as Phil mentioned, it's a separate component within the Microsoft Fabric suite that you would have to use. And yeah, I'm not sure. They basically looks like they're forcing people who by 2027 they have to stop using the existing Power BI streaming capability. I don't know how that looks on the visualization side, because again, that's part of the equation. But yeah, there is, and there's a bit of you'll have to go with Fabric and with the a separate component from your Power BI desktop, and I'm assuming there's going to be licensing costs and that associated with that as well. So,
well, and I think that's another important point. There has been some changes with licensing on both sides. Some recent changing with licensing. On the Power BI side, what we're seeing is everybody has to have an FSKU, so that means you have to have Fabric in your environment going forward for Power BI, and so that's something to keep in mind. And then Spotfire is also coming out with some new licensing SKUs, more on enterprise, with some additional capabilities within there. I guess within that SKU set. So some of this stuff is changing a little bit. So if you guys have questions around any of that, happy to answer any of those questions as well. So if there's no other questions, all I can say is thank you very much, everyone, for attending today. We appreciate you spending time with us. We have another webinar scheduled next week, next month, which for a topic to be coming up. Thanks very much, and please, if you have any questions, reach out to us. Happy to answer whatever questions you have. And thanks to Steve and thanks to Amanda for joining me on this webinar. We hope that
Thank you.
Everybody.
It was time well spent.
Everyone.
All right. Enjoy your
Take
afternoon or evening, morning, whatever it is. Take care.
Take
Bye,
care.
everybody.
Bye-bye.